Welcome to the PC Perspective Mailbag. This is episode number 38. It is being recorded on Thursday, April 6th, April 5th, I'm sorry, and it's going to be distributed on April 6th, 2018. I'm Josh Walrath. Today I'm here and happy, and Ryan is away, and Alan's been doing some too, and so I guess we're all just sharing off a few questions. We do mailbags every week. If this is the first one you've ever seen, as you've noticed, this is number 38, so there's plenty to catch up upon with. Whatever. But yeah, 37 more of these before, and now this one. Is there anything magical about 38? I don't think so. Anyhow, we take questions. You can either email us at rshroud at PCPer.com. He'll probably put those all together. You can use Twitter for either, probably do that at Ryan. He's got a Twitter account, twitter.com/RyanShroud. Oh, geez, you had to make me look this up? Yeah, Ryan Shroud, on one word. And isn't it great that when I swap away from the orange background, I turn deathly pale. Anyway, so the questions this week, there's not as many of them. I'll try to go into as much detail as possible on each. And we'll start off with Meatball CB. When charging devices with a battery, mobile phone, laptop, tablet, etc., is it better to let the battery fully drain down before dropping it back on the charger, or is it fine to just plug it in whenever you get the chance, regardless of how much it's drained since the last charge? You know, it seems with lithium-ion batteries, you're better off with charging them fully at once and then draining them down to about 10%, and then plug it in. Under 10 or 20%, people think that you shouldn't go all the way or below that it could actually cause some permanent damage, and it won't charge up nearly as full. You kind of can do some conditioning with lithium ion, in that, say you're getting, less charging time, you can, more adequately discharge as much as possible and then recharge. That might help. There's a lot of opinions on there, but yeah, don't get below 10% on those. Other kinds of batteries like lead acid, it doesn't care nearly as much. They just wear out after X amount of years, depending on how they're formulated. I know, there's certain polymer batteries that they utilize not lithium ion, but kind of a more, I think it's more lead acid based, but they use those for the battery backups on servers. Those things don't mind being kind of constantly under charge, or it doesn't need to be refreshed nearly as much as lithium ion, which kind of has a memory about how much power is stored in there. So, it depends on the battery, it depends on your usage, but yeah, you usually want to get it down below 20%, then recharge it up full, and that kind of keeps your battery kind of refreshed and it'll last longer. But if you're a person who just constantly plugs their phone in, it never gets below 85%, your battery's probably taking a bit more of a beating, and you don't really want to do that, at least from what I hear. What do I know? LCTR Games. What type of storage would you recommend for a video editing system? Do non-professional consumer-grade SSDs have sufficient endurance for regularly writing the gigs of data that video editing requires? Well, I mean, if you were a professional, sure, you want a larger professional type grade storage solution that you could do the editing. I mean, like what Ryan has with his frame rating rig, because they're constantly doing frame rating, recording to that, doing the analysis, all that stuff. And I think they've got 4 discs in a RAID 5 configuration, or 5 discs. Not really discs, they're SSDs. But if you're just a regular person who's using it kind of as a scratch drive, or just doing the editing, you get a 512 to 1 terabyte, well, you probably want bigger is better, so 1 terabyte NVMe, it's going to last a long time, even with that amount of writing. I mean, Tech Report ages ago, not ages, but many years ago, they did an SSD endurance, and I mean, they were getting an insane amount of writes off of just consumer drives. I think that a lot of the drive manufacturers, they are really conservative in their ratings. They over provision probably more than they need to in many of these circumstances, and you can expect many years, even with writing to it all the time. 3 years to 5 years would you would expect with that kind of editing for it to last. You may get a bum drive where memory chips will start wearing out a lot faster, but I think for the most part, I mean, you stick what you can afford and you get the biggest drive possible. And of course, the bigger the drive, the more you can write to it before it wears out. So yeah, I would be comfortable using just a regular 1 terabyte SSD, either, like Samsung 850 Evo, or, get one of those new NVMe drives from Western Digital that I think Alan reviewed this week. Something like that would probably last you quite a while and be extremely fast as well. Brissa117. Why haven't we seen monitors that feature both G-SYNC and FreeSync? It seems like that kind of flexibility would sell. Is it an NVIDIA licensing issue? Something technical? Well, it's probably both. The technical difference is the G-SYNC module is a different chip than the other controllers that utilize FreeSync. So I think I can't remember exactly the name of. My mind is going bad. But anyway, the G-SYNC module is different from the other transmitters, and that take the video signal and allow your LCD to do whatever. So there's links from other guys that support the different levels of FreeSync and adaptive sync. And you're not going to have two of those controllers on a monitor, one being a G-SYNC and the other being the FreeSync, and there's no way that NVIDIA is going to implement FreeSync on theirs, even though it's open source, because G-SYNC to them, they feel that their implementation is better. It handles low frame rate stuff better. It's got other features kind of buried in there that not very many people know about outside the company. And so they're holding on to that for dear life. And unfortunately, it adds an $100 to $200 worth of overhead on and licensing fees or whatever, as compared to just one of these, more generic controllers that support FreeSync and adaptive sync. So we don't know exactly the licensing that these monitor guys go through, but we do know that there is very different hardware, and the G-SYNC module and that name cost quite a bit extra when it comes to the price, as you can tell of this of these monitors. At 23S1. Can L1, L2, and L3 caches be bigger than the tens of megs it is currently? For example, 100 megabyte or even 1 gigabyte. What would be the complexities and potential advantages and disadvantages? Having larger caches means that more of the data that a CPU needs is closer to the execution pipelines. So L1 cache is the closest. It's typically fast access, and just a couple of cycles, and you can get that. L2 is a little bit further away. L3 is further away still. You're going to have increased latencies to each one of those caches, but each of those caches is a whole lot faster than going out to main memory. So you got to hit the memory controller to go out to main memory, and instead of having 20 to 30 cycles at the latest, you're tripling that, 120 cycles, however many. I know they're often done in nanoseconds. So why do I never look up these things before I'm answering questions? I don't know, because I'm dumb. But anyway, there's no reason why they can't be bigger. There are no physical limitations, but what there are kind of design limitations. How big do you want your CPU die to be? If you don't care about the size, then you can create larger caches. I know larger L1 caches may not necessarily be the best idea just because of the way it's accessed and how it's kind of connected to the front end. But, throughout the years, we've seen, 8K, 16K, 32K, 64K, and it seems like that's around, 64K data and instruction caches are very common. I don't know if we're going to see any reason to go higher than that. Maybe some of the CPU guys can chime in, but L2 cache is, we've seen that go up and down. There have been times where we've seen it inflate to higher numbers, and then they've cut it down just because of how data is shared, and plus the emergence of a large, slightly slower, but still much faster than main memory L3 cache. And then we can go into inclusive and exclusive, and there was another, a dirty cache. I can't remember. But those things can get as big as you want. But unfortunately, caches are typically the biggest power hogs of a CPU because they're always on. It's all volatile memory. So the SRAM, even if you power it down, it loses all the data. It's not like an SSD where it uses flash memory and non-volatile, where power is taken away or cut and the data is still there. And so these are large power and heat issuing areas that CPUs have, and you don't want to get them too big. Now, IBM, I believe, have made tens of megabytes to 100 megabyte, I think, caches in some of their latest power architectures, and those are huge chips. I mean, we're talking 800 millimeters square, and they don't care about how much power they consume. I mean, they probably up in the 300 watt level, but for consumer machines, that's really overkill. And plus, I mean, you're getting a couple of good dies per wafer out of those things, which is why they're so sky high in prices. But as we will see lower process nodes, caches will get bigger, but I think that you're going to see mainly the L3 caches go in larger amounts, and you're going to see 256K to 512K per core from both AMD and Intel, depending on what they're doing. So yeah, we're going to see bigger L3 caches, but per core L1 and L2, I think we're sitting in a really good place in terms of give and take with the design. At Carrie Hackett, I think he's asked here before, how long do you realistically think we are from hitting a brick wall for silicon? I keep reading that quantum tunneling is the big thing that is likely to cause issues on even smaller scales, but no signs of that so far. Boy, we're still quite a few years. I mean, we're only scratching the surface of 10 nanometer stuff, and we're going to see the guys, the main folks, they're going to be pushing that as their primary processes. We're going to see Global Foundries and Samsung come out with 7 nanometer products. Next year, the year after, things are still kind of fluid because they're hoping for 2019 in 7 nanometer, but who the heck knows if they're actually going to get there. 5 nanometer is still, I guess, pretty doable. It's when you get sub 5 that really strange things start happening. Now, we've had some test wafers, I think, at 5 nanometer and testing some waters below, but those are still far away from being in production. We're not going to see anything like that soon. I think 7 nanometer is going to be pretty long lasting, even though some of these companies may call it something different. But there are some products that use multiple patterning, like quad patterning, to do the litho. There's a couple others that are trying to do a mix and match where EUV where needed, and then some other standard litho afterwards. I don't know how that would work. I don't even know if it will work. And then those who are going to go and just do EUV for everything. EUV has some really good advantages. It's a power hog. That's not an advantage. It's a new technology that the industry has shoveled billions and billions of dollars into, and so far, only now are we having some, slightly viable machines out there. Next year is probably we're going to see actual production with EUV, but we don't know exactly how well those yields are going to be, just because it's simplified in the litho, but it's still really hard. I mean, you don't have to have as many masks, you don't have to do the multi-patterning, but it's still really hard, may not work as well as people are hoping, and you got to mix and match and do all the alchemy that process technology involves to get a working product at the end, and it's going to be tough. But I think 7's going to last a long time, and we're going to see, just as like Intel has done with their 14 nanometer, and they've improved that process over time, and now we're in 14 nanometer plus. We're going to see a lot of specialization at that 7 nanometer, because below that things start getting pretty tough. Yeah, we're going to make a jump to 5, but after that, it's going to be some interesting materials. It's going to be some really interesting manufacturing tricks to get things to work reliably and yield and bin where they want them to be. But it's we're still a good 10 years of advances before anything really crazy starts happening, or at least we hope. Cross our fingers. Psycho Wheat. Do you keep up with the World Rally Championship regularly? If so, do you have a subscription to their streaming service, or what other means do you recommend to see what is happening on the stages? I don't keep up with WRC as much as you would think. I mean, I enjoy rally racing in Sims, but it's not really a spectator sport for me. I do more rallycross. So I watch the FIA World Rallycross with, Peter Solberg, Andreas Backerud, Matthias Ekstrom, all those crazy cats over in Europe. They actually have got 2 races over in North America, one in Canada at Tres Rivières, or Three Rivers. French speakers. Anyway, and then in Austin, it's a brand new event at the Circuit of the Americas. And so they've created a rallycross section that uses part of the F1 course. And so they're expecting quite a few people to show up for that one, and kind of hoping that FIA WRX is going to be a little bit more popular here. It's a fun race to watch. There's always something going on, and the driving is pretty spectacular, and it's a combination of asphalt and dirt, jumps. I mean, Red Bull, I believe, they tried the GRC here, the Global Rallycross, and I didn't really like their courses very much throughout the U.S., and it was only, it was kind of the same 8 guys that they'd have, the individual, races going up to the final, and then everybody was in the final. And I think Scott Speed won this past year, but I just didn't like it as much as World Rallycross, and hopefully World Rallycross will have a little bit better following here in the U.S., and we'll see what they do. But a streaming service for sports has picked that up for this year in the U.S. I can't remember it offhand, but you can go to the FIA World Rallycross website, and they have the announcement there. And next week is the first race in Barcelona, I think. Looking forward to it. So, a lot of fun. Finally, our last question from TLNZ Studios. Did the guy who broke into your house raid your fridge too? Did you find the missing shoe? No, he didn't actually get into a refrigerator. He may have needed a tetanus shot after he opened that, if he did, but so far as we know, he was only digging through the trash and trying to crack some nuts that I found there. However, I never found his shoe, but I did find his iPhone. I think it was an iPhone X or an iPhone 8 Plus, one of those two, in my backyard. And so it's been sitting out there for the last 2 weeks, a couple of snowstorms. It was in an OtterBox, but we'll see how well the waterproofing on that phone gets. I just called the cops. They came and picked up the phone. I have no idea where this guy is. Obviously, he was not a homeless person because he was dressed nice. He had nice shoes, one of which we could find, and this pretty new iPhone, big one. But anyway, that's all the questions in my exciting life, and it's not nearly as good. I needed to study a little bit better. I apologize. I will do better next time and take a look at the questions well before and maybe get some basic information down so I don't look like an idiot, or at least more than I usually do. So anyway, that is episode number 38, Mailbag. Signing off. We'll see you later.